Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we head to the woods of Oklahoma, where a summer camp turned into the setting of one of the most disturbing unsolved crimes in American history. Imagine this. A warm summer evening, fireflies twinkling, the air buzzing with, the excitement of new friends and those long summer days. For the young girls at Camp Scott, it was supposed to be a place for joy, for laughter, making memories that should have lasted a lifetime. But on the morning of June 13th, 1977, that whole idyllic scene was just shattered, completely shattered. Three young girls, Lori Farmer, Michelle Guse, and Doris Milner, were found brutally murdered. And this was supposed to be just the first night of their 2-week camping trip.
It's a horror that's almost impossible to really wrap your head around, especially given the setting, a summer camp.
Exactly. It forces you to ask, how could this nightmare unfold? In the dark, sure, but in what everyone thought was a safe, supervised place. And maybe the biggest question, why nearly 50 years later, is no one definitively behind bars for this?
It's a question that still haunts so many people.
So today, we're going to spend some time unpacking this incredibly complex case. We'll trace the thread from 1977 all the way to the latest scientific developments. We want to try and understand the chilling story of the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders.
It's a case that really exposes how fragile our sense of safety can be, especially when it comes to children. And it left this indelible mark on an entire generation, truly. The victims. Lori Lee Farmer, she was just 8 years old. Michelle Heather Guse was 9, and Doris Denise Milner was 10. All from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, a nearby town.
Just kids.
Just kids. Their youth, the whole promise of summer camp.
Yeah.
It just stands in such stark, heartbreaking contrast to the violence they experienced. They just arrived at Camp Scott. It's this place nestled in a pretty remote wooded area near Locust Grove, Mays County. They were all set for 2 weeks of, classic American summer fun, campfire stories, swimming, learning about nature.
Excitement must have been huge.
Absolutely. You can just imagine the anticipation.
And what's so, unsettling about that context is that Camp Scott had only just opened for the season when this happened.
Right. It wasn't like there's a long history of problems there that might have, made people extra cautious.
No, it was supposed to be pristine, fresh, a symbol of new beginnings for summer. There wasn't any immediate sense of danger looming, no history that would foreshadow something this catastrophic.
It was meant to be a fresh start to summer, a place where excitement should have been the main feeling for these girls, for their families.
Instead, it became the site of this unimaginable horror. It marked the summer of 1977 forever for so many people and cast this long shadow over the very idea of safe spaces for kids.
Precisely. And the discovery itself that morning, June 13th, it was made by a camp counselor. Just devastating. The girls' bodies were found in a wooded area, tragically close to a trail leading to the camp showers, a place they were probably heading to.
Oh, wow.
They'd been sharing tent number 8. And chillingly, this tent was located in one of the more remote sections of the whole campsite.
Why was that? Just for the wilderness feel?
Probably. Give the campers a deeper sense of adventure, maybe wilderness immersion.
Mm-hmm.
But it inadvertently became this terrible vulnerability.
Because it was so isolated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Isolation meant cries for help were unlikely to be heard, and it gave an attacker cover, darkness, to operate undetected.
And the crime itself, the investigators documented it as incredibly brutal, targeted.
Yes, the girls had been bludgeoned, strangled, and sexually assaulted. It was a level of violence that just shocked the nation to its core.
I can only imagine.
It fundamentally impacted how people viewed child safety, the idea of innocence itself, especially in places like summer camps, which were thought to be inherently safe, supervised environments.
It must have sent this wave of fear across the country.
It absolutely redefined parental anxieties overnight. It triggered all these conversations about what is truly safe for our kids.
So what did the police find right away at the scene?
Well, the immediate physical evidence was critical, obviously. But as we'll get into, it also proved pretty problematic later on, given the forensic tech they had back then.
Okay.
Investigators quickly found a large red flashlight near the bodies. On the lens, there was a smudged fingerprint.
A fingerprint? That sounds promising.
It did. But crucially, back in '77, the technology just wasn't advanced enough to definitively identify a smudged print like that. It was tantalizing, but they couldn't fully use it then.
Huh. What else?
There was also a bloody footprint, size 9.5 shoe, found inside tent number 8.
Okay, size 9.5. That's specific.
Very specific. And that detail would become a major point of contention later during the trial.
Right.
They also recovered bloody sleeping bags, duct tape. It painted a grim picture of the struggle, the assailants' methods, all bagged as evidence, each piece holding potential clues. But, their full story wouldn't be known for decades.
It's already so disturbing, but then there's this other layer.
Yes.
This really unsettling detail that happened before the murders, a kind of premonition.
Yes, a chilling premonition that was tragically ignored. It makes the whole thing even more heartbreaking.
What happened?
Less than 2 months before the killings, during a training session for the counselors at Camp Scott, one of the counselors' tents was ransacked.
Okay, just ransacked, or was there more?
There was more. It wasn't just minor mischief. Inside the tent, they found a handwritten note, left inside an empty donut box, of all things.
A note. What did it say?
It contained this explicit, terrifying warning. It read, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls in Tent 1.
Tent 1, not Tent 8.
Tent 1, yes. Which adds another layer of strangeness. But the core message, a direct threat.
And what did they do with it?
It's almost unbelievable looking back, but at the time, they dismissed it. They thought it was a prank.
A prank? Seriously?
Seriously. Camp officials, maybe they were used to harmless hijinks, I don't know. They just discarded the note. The implications of that choice. Viewing a direct threat of murder as a joke.
Yeah.
They're immense. It underscores this devastatingly missed opportunity. Could they have prevented it? Or at least heightened security made people more aware.
You have to wonder.
That decision to overlook the night, it undoubtedly haunted the camp, the investigators, the families, for decades. It leaves that lingering question. Could this tragedy have been averted?
So after this horrific crime happens, the investigation starts. Where do they look first?
Well, law enforcement pretty quickly zeroed in on a primary suspect, a man named Gene Leroy Hart.
Okay, who was he?
He was 33 at the time, a Cherokee man. And he had a significant criminal history, which immediately put him on their radar.
What kind of history?
At the time of the murders, Hart was a convicted rapist. And even more critically, he was an escapee from the Mays County Jail.
An escapee? How long had he been out?
He'd been on the run since 1973, so 4 full years before the Camp Scott murders. This history, combined with the fact that he was known to be in the area, it made him an immediate person of interest.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a strong lead.
The reasons he became the prime suspect were compelling for investigators. His pattern of violent crimes, especially sexual assault, and credible reports placing him near Camp Scott. It all pointed towards him.
So they focused the investigation on him.
Intensely. Given his background, escaped convict, violent past, he fit a profile they naturally prioritize. This led to a massive 10-month-long manhunt. It spanned multiple states. Federal, local agencies poured resources into finding him.
10 months? That's a long time.
It is. The pursuit ended pretty dramatically in 1978. They finally apprehended him in a remote cabin. His capture was huge news. For many people, it felt like, okay, justice for these girls is finally within reach.
But catching him was one thing, proving it was another. The trial, how did that go?
Right. The trial was in 1979. And the prosecution's case, it was largely circumstantial.
Circumstantial. What did they present?
They presented evidence like a hair found at the crime scene. They claimed it was a match to Hart's. They also relied heavily on, the general circumstantial stuff, him being in the area, being a fugitive, his concerning criminal history. They painted a picture of a man capable of this kind of violence.
Okay, but if it's circumstantial, the defense has room to push back.
And they did.
Yeah.
Hart's defense attorney, Garvin Isaacs, was incredibly astute, really effective, a formidable opponent. Isaacs masterfully challenged the reliability of the forensic evidence they had at the time, which, remember, was cutting edge for 1979, but had serious limitations compared to what we have now.
Like what specifically?
Well, he highlighted critical discrepancies. Remember that bloody shoe print? Size 9.5?
Yeah.
Hart wore an 11.5 shoe.
Oh, that's a big difference.
A major difference. And the defense hammered that point home. Creates reasonable doubt right there.
Okay, what else? The fingerprint.
Isaacs underscored the inconclusive nature of that smudged print on the flashlight. He argued it couldn't be definitively linked to Hart. Without clear identification, it's just an unidentifiable mark. Useless for court, basically.
Right.
And crucially, Isaac successfully argued that hair analysis back then, it wasn't a definitive science. It relied on microscopic comparison, looking at color, texture, cross-section. It could show consistency between samples, maybe suggest a link, but it couldn't say, this hair only came from Jean Leroy Hart. Not like fingerprints or modern DNA.
So it wasn't a unique match.
Exactly. It couldn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So Isaacs cast considerable doubt on the prosecution's key forensic claims, leaving the jury with this mosaic of indirect evidence.
So what was the verdict?
The outcome sent absolute shockwaves through the public, the legal community. After deliberation, the jury acquitted Jean Leroy Hart of the murders.
Acquitted, wow.
Yeah, it was a verdict that left so many people not just disappointed, but furious, feeling like justice was just denied. For Lori, Michelle, and Doris.
It really highlights that concept of reasonable doubt, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It showed how a skilled defense can leverage that doubt, even when the public feels the circumstantial case is overwhelming. It laid bare that painful gap between public suspicion and what can actually be proven legally in a courtroom. Especially back then.
That must have been incredibly difficult for the families.
Unimaginably difficult. That decision really resonated across the nation. It shook public trust in the system, especially for a case involving such horrific crimes against children.
And what happened to Hart after the acquittal?
Well, there's another layer to this whole complex story. Just 2 months after he was acquitted of the Girl Scout murders, Jean Leroy Hart died.
Died? How?
He had a heart attack while he was exercising at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary.
So he was still in prison?
Yes. Even though he was acquitted of these murders, he was still serving time for his previous unrelated crimes, the ones he'd escaped from years before. So he never actually walked free after his initial escape.
So his death, it basically closed the door on the case at that point.
Pretty much. It solidified it as a cold case. No living suspect left to pursue, legally speaking.
So for decades, that acquittal just left this huge question mark, this feeling of incompleteness for the families, for the public. The answers felt totally out of reach.
Completely out of reach. But importantly, law enforcement never truly closed the case. They kept the files open.
Did they ever revisit it?
Yes, several times over the years. They reopened it specifically for new DNA testing as the technology advanced. There was always this hope that modern science could finally bring some clarity where the older methods couldn't.
And this is where we see the real power of modern forensics, right? Decades later.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Trying to resolve a narrative that had been clouded by doubt for so long. The most significant update came much more recently in 2022.
To see 22, what happened?
The Mays County Sheriff's Office, after a new, incredibly thorough look at the remaining DNA evidence from the scene using the most modern tech available, they announced a critical finding. Their conclusion was that the DNA profile from the scene strongly suggests Jean Leroy Hart's involvement, and significantly, that he is the only suspect who has not been definitively ruled out by this advanced testing.
Strongly suggests, but not 100%.
Well, in DNA terms, strongly suggests is about as close as you can get, especially with degraded, decades-old evidence. And crucially, everyone else they tested against it was ruled out. Only Hart remained as a possible source.
So scientifically, he's linked?
Scientifically linked in a way that simply wasn't possible back in 1979. It's a monumental shift in the narrative, moving beyond circumstantial evidence to a direct, albeit historical, scientific link.
What does that mean practically? Obviously, you can't retry him. He's deceased.
Right. No new trial is possible. But the implications, they're incredibly meaningful, especially for the families of Lori, Michelle, and Doris. This unofficial conclusion, backed by the undeniable power of modern science, it provides this powerful, though obviously still heartbreaking, sense of closure.
A measure of truth, finally.
Exactly. It reshapes the whole story of this case, moving it from complete ambiguity to a place where the prime suspect is now scientifically tied to the crime. It offers a kind of understanding that was unattainable for decades, maybe a degree of peace after so much torment.
Even with that recent DNA finding, though, that initial acquittal, it left such a void. And that void for decades has just fueled endless public speculation, this real hunger for answers.
Oh, absolutely.
And that hunger, you see it playing out online, right? In true crime communities, cold case forums.
It truly does. The internet almost becomes this collective investigator when official justice feels like it fell short. That Hart did it theory, which was initially based mostly on that compelling circumstantial evidence his history, being a fugitive, being near the camp,
Yeah.
that theory gained significant, almost overwhelming plausibility with these recent DNA findings. The modern re-examination strongly suggests the original evidence, even though it couldn't be proven in court back then, might have been right all along.
It's like science finally caught up to confirm what many people suspected for decades.
Exactly. It's a striking example of that.
And it makes you think. The defense successfully questioning the evidence back then, it doesn't mean Hart wasn't guilty.
Precisely.
It just highlights the limitations of forensics back then and that high bar of beyond a reasonable doubt for juries. Just because it wasn't definitive then doesn't mean it was wrong. It just couldn't be proven to the jury's satisfaction with the tools they had.
That's a crucial distinction. It shows how justice and science are dynamic. They evolve.
Okay, so that's the Hart did it theory, now bolstered by DNA.
Yeah.
What about other theories that floated around?
Well, in stark contrast, you had the conspiracy theory. This gained a lot of traction around the time of the trial.
The conspiracy. To frame Hart.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
The speculation was that because of his Native American identity, his prior convictions, maybe he was seen as an easy scapegoat, a way for authorities to quickly close a high-profile, horrific case under immense public pressure.
Has that held up?
Not really. While it resonated with some people at the time, maybe tapped into existing tensions, it's largely been discredited, especially now with the DNA evidence.
Because the DNA points away from framing, towards him actually being linked.
Exactly. The modern findings reinforce the connection between Hart and the scene through scientific markers. It kind of cuts through that older speculation, providing a more grounded basis for understanding what likely happened.
Were there theories about other people being involved, not just Hart?
Yes, absolutely. Hart's acquittal really fueled the other killer theory. It suggested maybe another person or even multiple people were involved.
Why? As an explanation for the acquittal.
Partly that, yeah. It offered an alternative explanation for the crime and for why the jury might have acquitted Hart. If the prime suspect didn't do it, the logical jump for many was, well, someone else must have. So people speculated about other potential suspects, known or unknown.
Have the police looked into those other possibilities?
Yes, and they've addressed this directly. Authorities have stated publicly they meticulously investigated other potential suspects over the years, names that came up from tips, witness accounts, online theories, everything.
Yeah.
Using that same modern DNA tech, they've now definitively ruled those other individuals out.
So it keeps coming back to Hart.
It refocuses attention solely on him as the only suspect not excluded by the DNA evidence. It really narrows the scope of the enduring whodunit mystery.
Beyond just who the killer was, there's another whole area of discussion online, right? About the camp itself. Security failures.
Yes, that's a huge point of concern in online discussion.
Yeah.
Forums, documentaries, they frequently highlight what many see as poor supervision at Camp Scott, and critically, those ignored warning signs leading up to the murders.
It wasn't just random violence in a vacuum.
Exactly. There were precursors. People often point to prior break-ins reported at Camp Scott just days before the murders.
Break-ins.
Plural.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Not just isolated incidents, but a series of disturbances that, arguably should have raised alarms. And then there's the note.
And of course, that incredibly eerie, strange note warning. Found by a counselor, dismissed as a prank. These elements together paint this picture of an environment where maybe vital alerts were overlooked, where security protocols, if they existed, weren't adequately enforced or adapted. And that might have contributed to the tragic outcome.
What happened to the camp afterwards?
The ultimate consequence of these perceived failures and the immense trauma of the murders. Camp Scott closed permanently after the tragedy.
Permanently, it never reopened.
It never reopened its gates. It stands as this somber testament to the lasting impact of the event on the families, the community, the Girl Scouts organization nationally, and the place itself. The site is still abandoned today.
Just abandoned woods now.
Yeah, a silent, haunting monument to the tragedy. It adds to the mystique, the sense of unresolved history that just clings to that area.
It really is remarkable how a case nearly 50 years old still resonates so powerfully, especially online. It's not just history, it's an active discussion.
It has such a tenacious hold on the public imagination. It shows how these platforms can keep cold cases alive, foster this kind of collective investigation.
Where do you see it discussed most?
You see extensive threads on Reddit, especially places like Unresolved Mysteries and Archer Crime, armchair detectives dissecting every detail, sharing theories, speculating.
Yeah, I've seen those.
And on YouTube, you have creators like Kendall Ray, that chapter, doing these long-form explorations. They introduce the case to millions, summarize it, analyze it, use visuals. It brings the story to life for a new generation.
And it's not just online forums, right? There are books, podcasts.
Oh, yeah. Books like Tent Number 8 by the former prosecutor Gloyd McCoy, offering an insider view. The Camp Scott Murders by C.S. Kelly, very detailed research. And podcasts. It's a staple. True Crime Garage, Morbid, Crime Junkie, they've all covered it. Each time it brings new listeners to the story, keeps it relevant.
Even TikTok.
Even TikTok now. Short-form storytelling, eerie Camp Scott imagery. It captures a younger audience, shows the breadth of its reach across different platforms. New media keeps reintroducing these historical cases.
So it's not just for, like, seasoned true crime buffs.
No, it keeps finding new audiences, and each one contributes to this collective attempt to understand. Locally, of course, the area is still deeply affected. The abandoned site just adds to that feeling that the past is very much present there.
As we kind of wrap this up, it feels important to talk about the human cost, the tragedy, the fear it created. It wasn't just confined to those woods.
No, indeed. The impact on Broken Arrow, where the girls lived, was immense, enduring, a deep wound that never fully healed for that community. It rippled through Oklahoma and really shaped the national conversation about child safety. Summer camps, similar places. The fear from this crime reshaped parental anxieties, led to this widespread reevaluation of security supervision standards across the country. It changed how parents thought about letting their kids have that classic American summer experience.
And you can't ignore the effect on the Girl Scouts organization itself.
Absolutely not. This single devastating event became this stark, heartbreaking reminder of vulnerability. Even in spaces designed to be safe, nurturing, empowering for young girls, it irrevocably changed perceptions of summer camps. They went from idyllic escapes to places where vigilance was suddenly paramount. The organization had to grapple with that, how they operated moving forward.
Thinking about the justice system aspect again, this case really feels like a study in the limitations, especially back then.
It is. It's a compelling example of those inherent limitations, especially looking through the lens of 1970s forensics. When you revisit the trial evidence, you see what they considered strong circumstantial evidence then. Hart's presence, his history, that initial hair match.
But then you have what the defense successfully poked holes in.
Exactly. What was argued as circumstantial or inconclusive, that big shoe size discrepancy, the smudged fingerprint, the fact that hair analysis wasn't precise science, yet only consistency, not definitive identification.
That contrast really makes you reflect on justice in the 70s and how much technology has changed things.
It really does. This case is such a powerful, though painful, example of how the system back then, with those forensic limits, could lead to a verdict that left families without resolution, without certainty. It shows the weight placed on circumstantial evidence when definitive proof isn't available, and the tough spot juries are in with those ambiguities.
But then the modern science comes in decades later.
But then, yes, you have that modern reexamination, and that, I think, is the central thread of truth in this whole story. The recent DNA findings provide this almost unprecedented clarity. Decades later, it acts as a crucial historical correction.
It shows how forensics can change the whole narrative.
Powerfully illustrates it. It offers a form of closure, a measure of truth that was simply impossible back then. It's a testament to that persistent search for answers and how science can ultimately provide them, even if it takes decades.
So, after all this time, why does this case endure so strongly? It's more than just the brutality or the tragic loss of life.
I think it is. It's that complex mix, lost innocence definitely, the inherent eeriness of that wilderness setting, that haunting premonition, the note that was ignored, and perhaps most profoundly, that deep legal ambiguity left by Hart's acquittal.
That not guilty verdict?
Yeah.
It's still the biggest mystery for so many people, isn't it?
It really is. It forces us to explore the factors that might have influenced that jury. Was it just the strength of the reasonable doubt argument? Was there some distrust of authority, a reflection of biases? Why were they hesitant to convict on circumstantial evidence, even with such a compelling suspect?
And why do Redditors, TikTokers, everyone still scrutinize that aspect so intensely nearly 50 years later?
I think it's a search for understanding not just who did it, but for understanding the justice system's response to it. How that response left so many questions unanswered for so long. It's this collective desire to make sense of what feels like an injustice, maybe, and to find a clear path to the truth, whatever that might be.
And what does it mean to find closure without a new trial after decades searching for a truth that was buried? That's a heavy question.
It's a question that resonates deeply, certainly with the families, but also with anyone who tries to understand these dark, unresolved corners of our history.
Will the truth ever truly come out about that stormy night in 10/8? Or has Camp Scott taken its final secret to the woods? Thank you for joining us on Threads of Truth as we explored the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. Next time on Threads of Truth, we travel to medieval England, where two mysterious children reportedly appeared from nowhere, speaking a strange language and claiming to be from a place called the Land of St. Martin, the mystery of the Green Children of Woolpit.